The family business hijack. I was standing in the marble lobby of Romano's flagship restaurant, watching my cousin Marcus give a television interview about his vision for the empire. When I made the decision that would destroy him in exactly 96 hours, he was sitting in the leather chair I had custom ordered in front of the stone fireplace I had designed, talking about the family legacy he had inherited 6 months ago. The reporter asked him about the secret to his success. Marcus smiled, that practiced smile I had taught him for investor meetings, and said, "It's all about understanding the market, having the vision. Some people are just born to lead." The camera didn't catch me standing behind the crew, but it caught every word of the lie that was about to cost him everything. Where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop a comment below. I'd love to know who's part of our community. My name is Sofia, and for 7 years, I had been the invisible architect of a $10 million restaurant empire. When I started working for my grandfather Enzo in 2016, Romano's was a single failing Italian restaurant in downtown Boston, hemorrhaging money and customers. When he died last spring, it was a sophisticated hospitality group with 12 locations across New England, a catering division, and a food truck fleet that dominated the Boston market. I had built every system, crafted every strategy, designed every menu, and negotiated every major contract that made Romano's profitable. But according to Enzo's will, none of that mattered, because I was a woman, and in his old world mind, women didn't run businesses. They just worked in them. The will was read on a Tuesday morning in April. I sat in the lawyer's office next to Marcus, my 26-year-old cousin who had worked exactly 18 months at Romano's, mostly as a host who showed up late and left early. I listened as the attorney explained that Marcus would inherit 100% ownership of Romano's holdings. L.C. My name appeared once in the 40-page document as the recipient of a $5,000 appreciation bonus for my years of service. Marcus had the decency to look embarrassed. "Sofia," he said, reaching for my hand, "this doesn't change anything. We're family. You'll always have a place here. You'll be my right hand. We'll run this together." I looked at his honest face, at his expensive suit paid for with profits from strategies I had developed, and I smiled. "I'm sure we will, Marcus. I'm sure we will," but I wasn't planning to be anyone's right hand anymore. I was planning to be the entire body that walked away and left him with nothing but the illusion of ownership. The psychology of being erased from your own success is something most people can't comprehend. For 7 years, I had been the strategic mind behind every expansion, every partnership, every innovation that made Romano successful. I had missed family dinners to negotiate contracts. I had worked 80-hour days during restaurant openings. I had sacrificed relationships, vacations, and my own dreams to build something I believed would one day be mine. But in Italian-American families like ours, tradition isn't just for Francit's law. Men inherit women assistencia. It doesn't matter if the woman built the empire with her own hands. It only matters that she doesn't have the right chromosomes to officially own it. The first week after the funeral, I watched Marcus try to step into the role of CEO. He called meetings about new directions and fresh perspectives. He wanted to rebrand the restaurants with a more modern feel. He talked about expanding into nightlife, maybe opening a sports bar. He had no idea that every supplier contract, every lease agreement, every licensing deal was structured in a way that only I fully understood. You see, when you're building something from the ground up, you learn to protect yourself, not because you're paranoid, but because you're practical. I had spent 7 years creating a web of relationships and dependencies that looked simple from the outside but were actually intricate and fragile. Marcus thought he had inherited a machine. He had actually inherited a spider web, and I was the spider. The first string I pulled was the food suppliers. Marcus didn't know that our primary vendor Coastal Foods wasn't just a contractor, they were a partnership. 3 years ago, when Romano's was expanding rapidly, I had negotiated an exclusive supply agreement that gave them guaranteed volume in exchange for below-market prices. But the contract had a clause that most people missed. It was contingent on my personal oversight of quality control. I had built that clause in as protection against corporate interference. If ownership changed hands and tried to compromise our food quality for profit, I could trigger a contract review. What Marcus didn't realize was that quality control oversight meant that if I was unpersonally signing off on orders, Coastal Foods could suspend deliveries pending contract renegotiation. On Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Marcus's television interview, I sent a formal notification to Coastal Foods that I was no longer providing quality oversight for Romano's accounts. By Tuesday afternoon, deliveries to all 12 restaurants had stopped. By Wednesday, Marcus was calling me in a panic. "Sofia, what the hell is happening? Our food suppliers cut us off. They're saying something about contract violations. You know these people, right? Can you fix this?" I was sitting in my apartment, reviewing job applications for my new Ventura restaurant consulting firm I had quietly incorporated 2 months before Enzo's death. I put down my laptop and gave Marcus my full attention. "I don't work for Romano's anymore. Marcus, I resigned on Friday." "The letter should have reached your desk this morning." "You what? You can't resign? Your family..." "This is the family business." "Actually," I said, my voice calm and professional, "it's your business. I was never family. Remember, I was staff. And now I'm former staff." The second string I pulled was our celebrity chef partnerships. Romano has had exclusive relationships with 3 James Beard Award winners who designed signature dishes for our upscale locations. These weren't just menu consulting contracts. They were personal relationships I had cultivated over years of industry networking. What Marcus didn't know was that all 3 chefs had key personnel clauses in their contracts. If certain key personnel were no longer involved in menu development, the chefs could terminate their agreements with 60 days' notice. By Thursday, all 3 chefs had formally withdrawn their signature dishes from Romano's menus. The upscale locations that depended on these exclusive offerings suddenly had nothing to differentiate them from the dozens of other Italian restaurants in Boston. The third string was our real estate. Romano's didn't own most of its locations, we leased them. But I had negotiated those leases personally, building relationships with property managers and landlords across the city. More importantly, I had structured the lease agreements with personal guarantees and performance clauses that were tied to specific operational metrics. When Romano's started missing food deliveries and losing signature menu items, customer satisfaction scores began dropping rapidly. When satisfaction scores dropped below the threshold specified in our lease agreements, landlords could trigger early renewal negotiations or terminate leases for cause. By Friday, Marcus was facing potential eviction notices on 4 of his 12 locations. The fourth and final string was our staff. Restaurant success isn't just about food and location, it's about people. I had hired, trained, and promoted the management team at every Romano's location. These weren't just employees. They were professionals I had mentored, people whose careers I had invested in personally. What Marcus discovered over the weekend was that loyalty in the restaurant industry isn't 2 buildings or brand name sits to people. When word spread that I was starting my own consulting firm and that I was looking for experienced managers to help launch a new restaurant concept, the exodus began. By Monday morning, Marcus had lost his head chef, 2 location managers, and his entire marketing team. The people who actually knew how to run the restaurants were gone, leaving him with a collection of expensive leases, empty kitchens, and no idea how to operate any of it. That's when he called me for the 4th time in 6 days. And this Chimmy, He wasn't calling his family. He was calling as a desperate businessman facing the collapse of his inheritance. Sofia, please, I need your help. I don't know how to fix this. Everything is falling apart. I'll pay you whatever you want. Just come back and help me save the restaurants. I was in my new office space, a modest but elegant suite in the back bay where I was setting up Romano Consulting. Yes, I had kept the family name for my own venture. The irony was intentional. I'm afraid I can't help you, Marcus. You see, I'm launching a new restaurant concept next month. It's going to require all of my attention. What concept? He asked, his voice small and confused. It's called Nona's Table, I said. Authentic Italian cuisine family recipes, locally sourced ingredients. I'm opening 12 locations across New England over the next 18 months. In fact, I've already secured leases on several prime locations that recently became available. The silence on the line stretched for nearly a full minute. Then, in a voice that barely qualified as a whisper, he asked the question I had been waiting 7 years to hear. Are you stealing my restaurants? I smiled, looking out at the Boston skyline where 3 of my new Nona's Table locations would soon be visible. Marcus, I said, my voice gentle but firm, you can't steal something that was never really yours. You inherited the name and the paperwork, but the relationships, the systems, the knowledge that was always mine. I just took it with me when I left. The collapse of Romano S took exactly 96 hours from the moment I made the decision in the lobby. It wasn't violence, it was precision. It wasn't destruction, it was redistribution. I didn't steal Marcus's empire, I simply revealed that the empire had always been an illusion. The real power, the actual business, was in the connections and competencies that walked out the door with me. Nona's Table opened its first location 6 months later, in the space that had previously housed Romano's flagship restaurant. The lease had become available when the landlord terminated Romano's agreement for non-performance. I was able to secure it at a favorable rate because of my existing relationship with the property management company. The second location opened 3 months after that, followed by 4 more over the next year. By the time the first anniversary of Enzo's death came around, Nona's Table was a thriving restaurant group with annual revenue approaching $8 million. Romano's, meanwhile, had closed all but 2 locations and was operating at a significant loss. Marcus tried to sue me for corporate sabotage and theft of trade secrets. The case was dismissed within 6 months. You can't steal relationships that people built with you personally. You can't steal knowledge that you created yourself. And you can't steal opportunities that only exist because of your own work and reputation. The gender dynamic wasn't lost on anyone in the Boston restaurant industry. A woman had built an empire, been erased from its ownership, and then methodically reclaimed her life's work under her own name. The story became a case study in business schools and a cautionary tale for family-owned businesses that still believed in gender-based succession. But for me, it wasn't about making a statement about women in business, though I was happy to be an example. It was about something more personal. The right to own what you build. The right to be credited for your own success. The right to not be erased from your own life story because of an accident of birth. 3 years later, Nona's Table was valued at $15 million. I owned 100% of it, and my name was on every contract, every lease, every partnership agreement. When food industry magazines wrote about the company's success, they quoted me, not some male figurehead who happened to share my DNA. Marcus eventually found work as a restaurant manager in Providence. It was honest work, and he was apparently good at it. We haven't spoken since the lawsuit was dismissed. But I heard through family members that he had learned to appreciate the actual skill involved in restaurant operations. Sometimes the best education is failure, and the best teacher is consequences. My grandfather Enzo died believing that women couldn't run businesses. He died wrong. But more than that, he died having built something beautiful with his own granddaughter, only to hand it to someone else because he couldn't see past his own prejudices. The tragedy isn't that I took the business back. The tragedy is that it was ever taken from me in the first place. The tragedy is that a brilliant man could work alongside his own granddaughter for 7 years, watch her build his dreams into reality, and still believe that her gender disqualified her from ownership. But that tragedy became someone else's empire. And sometimes that's the most complete victory of all, not just reclaiming what was yours, but improving it beyond what anyone thought possible. If you're building something beautiful in someone else's name, if your contributions are being minimized because of who you are rather than what you've accomplished, this is for you. Your work belongs to you. Your relationships belong to you. Your knowledge belongs to you. And no will, no tradition, no family expectation can change that. You do you and have to settle for being someone else's right hand when you're fully capable of being your own CEO. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is show them exactly what they've lost by underestimating you. The market has a way of correcting gender bias, one successful woman at a time. And sometimes that correction tastes exactly like justice.